Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around I'm playing as the Dark Elves against the Skaven led by Brammy's Chopper on the map, the Crack of Karkin. So let's see how things break down. And right off the bat as we go in, I do want to mention that I am bringing Marathi again, and you guys might be wondering why, but in this case, because Marathi is not really the most common pick, you usually see the dragons of course, because those are a popular mount, and or either Malekith on a dragon, or one of the normal Dark Elf lords on a dragon. But I'm bringing Marathi, and you might be wondering why. Well, the main reason here is because Marathi has access to Doom and Darkness from the Lore of Death. And no other Dark Elf unit gets this at this point. I am hoping that eventually the Dark Elves will get Lore of Death on one of their wizards, but until that happens, or unless that happens, Marathi is the only one who can get access to that, and so we definitely have Doom and Darkness here for that crazy debuff, and my hope is to use it to get terror bombs. Now Marathi herself does not cause any fear or anything, so I did have to bring a black dragon to get that source of terror. And of course, Aspect of the Dread Knight is not a spell she gets, unfortunately. I did bring her in with Heartrender and Darksword, which will debuff all nearby enemies when she's in melee, and I also brought in Enchanting Beauty, which will debuff them further when she's just in the vicinity. For spells, I did bring Deadly Onslaught just for a little bit of extra damage. Marathi is no pushover in close quarters. She does have a slight bonus against large, which is not that relevant against Skaven, but more importantly, she does have armor piercing, which means that against someone like Weak or that sort of unit, she can definitely dish out a bit of hurt. Definitely more than you would expect from a mostly spellcaster-oriented hero, especially with a crazy charge bonus of 85 with Sulafet. So what I did bring for spells is I brought in Soul Stealer and Pit of Shades for damage, and as well as Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma for damage output. Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma has very low mana cost, and it can actually do pretty well against some of the squishier Skaven units like Plague Monks, which they do tend to bring, and they are very susceptible to this Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma. Pit of Shades, just a very strong damage spell, and if my opponent clumps up, and Soul Stealer is just good against single targets. Finally though, I did bring Doom and Darkness, and this is definitely kind of the key spell here, hoping to cause a terror rout with the help of my Black Dragon. Of course she does have a few other abilities. She has Spiteful Conjuration, which is derived from the Lore of Darkness, and this is a debuff to armor for 18 seconds when she casts, and Life Leeching, which is improved power recharge rate, which is just a very solid thing in general. She also has Greater Arcane Conduit, which is a constant improvement to power recharge rate and power reserves. Then I did bring a Black Dragon, and this is, I don't have any heroes, but a Black Dragon is kind of like my hero, I guess, here. It's simply there to cause that terror, and it's not the best of units against Skaven, I don't think, except unless Skaven brings some large units, but Skaven don't, as far as I've seen, Skaven don't tend to bring that many of those. But it does have armor piercing. It can dish out a very respectable damage. It has Noxious Breath, which is a very solid spell or range attack against blobs. But most importantly, it causes terror, and you can flex around and kind of hit units in the back and hopefully cause terror outs. Now for my front line, I did bring 4 units of Bleak Swords, and these guys, I brought them instead of Dread Spears because Dread Spears, once again, Skaven don't tend to bring that much large, and I figured that Bleak Swords would be a better choice just because they're a little better at dishing out damage against infantry. Then 2 units of Witch Elves are there to provide some additional support. Most importantly, of course, they do bring Madness of Cain, which is a huge debuff, but more importantly than the debuff, it causes enemies to rampage, which means they can't just push on to wherever they want to. For my kind of zoning or ranged and skirmishing contingent, I have 3 Shades with dual weapons, and the reason I brought these guys is because against Skaven, who don't tend to have that much armor, and the Skaven units that can catch the Shades are simply lightly armored, I figured that the Shades with dual weapons are a better choice. Out on the flanks, supporting them, I do have 2, rather than Shades with great weapons. Out on the flanks, I do have 2 units of Dark Riders, and these guys are simply there as a zoning tool for the Shades, just to kind of block off enemy units trying to intercept them, even if it means throwing them away. Otherwise, they're there to dive on enemy backline troops. So, throwing things into slow-mo, my opponent did bring he brought Lord Skrulk, who's a decent melee combatant himself. He does cause Contaminated, which is leadership debuff, and more importantly, he has a whole bunch of spells. He has, of course, he also has the Liber Bubonicus, as well as the I do believe it's the Rod of Corruption or something along those lines. Yeah, the Rod of Corruption, which is an AOE sort of Fate of Buno-esque spell, and then Liber Bubonicus, which is sort of like a Spirit Leech. And he also brought in a bunch of spells on top of that. He brought in Aura of Pestilence, actually that's not a spell, but Vermintide, which lets him spawn Clan Rats. He brought in Plague, which is a Vortex, and he brought in Pestilent Breath, which lets him spawn Plague Monks. So just a very solid spell selection. For his front line, my opponent brought a whole bunch of Clan Rats, veteran up a bit, and these guys should trade somewhat efficiently with some of the more lightly armored Dark Elf units. And they provide a zoning tool for as more heavily armored or heavy backline, which includes 2 units of storm vermin with halberds to shut down any large units I might bring, as well as 2 units of plague monk sensor bearers. And these guys have very high leadership, especially for skaven, but honestly even for any other faction. It's even comparable to dwarves or units like that. They do cause contaminated. They have magical armor piercing attacks. A very solid charge bonus. They have frenzy. They're just a very, very respectable unit in general. The storm vermin halberds, of course, can deal with large, and then the doom wheels, which are a bit of an interesting pick, but once again, because dark elves aren't expecting skaven to bring much large, the doom wheels could potentially function pretty well here, because if they get against my bleak swords who don't have charge defense, or against my shades who they can easily run down, they could definitely be a bit of a nuisance. So throwing into full gear, I do push my shades forward, hoping to get some sneaky shots into this doom wheel. In the meantime, my dark riders are already converging onto the center here, ready to zone and hopefully protect the shades. You can see the shades are setting themselves up, and this initial volley goes into the central doom wheel. You can see it loses about half of its HP instantly. Death laser shot does go out, and I do throw these dark riders into the fray, just trying to shut down these doom wheels. You can see this doom wheel does get killed, well, it gets broken, and shortly will get shattered as I push my bleak swords forward. Now I'm desperately trying to disengage my shades here, and unfortunately my dark riders do get terrified here because doom wheels do cause terror, and so they do rout off. It means they're no longer zoning for the shades. But the shades do get clear with fairly minimal losses, nothing too crazy, and I did manage to take a doom wheel off the field already, which is definitely a bit of a win for me, I think. I do manage to drop a black dragon here on top of this doom wheel, and this other doom wheel is getting tied down by shades with dual weapons. And in the meantime, this frontline fight has kind of degenerated with the witch elves diving in, the bleak swords slugging it out, and Marathi's still kind of hovering around over here. And in the meantime, the dragon and the dark shards, the shades are tanked through this doom wheel over here, and definitely doing quite a bit of a number on it. In the meantime, Skrull has simply pushed through, as have these plague monk sensor bearers. Skrull has popped to stand your ground. In the meantime, I have popped a pit of shades, which absolutely annihilates these clan rats and also beats the snot out of these storm vermin and clan rats over here, and definitely helps me sort of force a breach here and wrap this flank up fairly efficiently. But unfortunately, my backline is definitely a bit compromised. There's still these plague monk sensor bears running amok. Lord Skrull is being a nuisance. The bleak swords are there, and this doom wheel is still running around. I do drop a doom and darkness over here, which allows me to terror out some of these units. I do successfully terror out the clan rats, and but unfortunately I'm not able to terror out the rest of these units, at least not initially, and so they tank it out. They tank through the doom and darkness fairly successfully. In the meantime, though, Marathi is still dishing out quite a bit of hurt in here. The witch elves are tying down my enemy as best as they can. Over here, the witch elves are slugging it out with the plague monk sensor bears. I'm not actually sure how this fight would go. The plague monk sensor bears are definitely, I think, a bit tankier, but there's definitely more models of them. But witch elves are definitely no pushovers. In the meantime, there's a wheel here. You can see some clan rats have been spawned on top of my shades, just trying to shut them down, so I do push in these bleak swords. In the meantime, Lord Skrull, I do believe, has popped his AoE. Maybe he didn't. Maybe that was just a mistake. Over here, in the meantime, the doom wheel is almost getting murdered by between Marathi and the black dragon, who are still doing absolute champion work. Unfortunately, this sort of center has collapsed. These witch elves are getting massacred. My bleak swords have been terrified. The doom wheels are definitely doing some pretty crazy work there. Definitely something I did not entirely expect. You can see my infantry contingent is definitely struggling a lot. So seeing that there's definitely this bit of a problem here with my poor witch elves getting annihilated, I do drop Marathi into the fray, just trying to get on top of these units. And I do spray some good old noxious breath all over these units with my dragon. In the meantime, all of these bleak swords are regrouping and coming back. These shades, unfortunately, are getting routed off by Skrulk, but they did take Skrulk down a decent amount. He's definitely much lower on HP than he was before. These bleak swords are being pursued by the plague monk sensor bearers, and over here, more plague monks, actually summoned unit of plague monks, is slugging it out with shades with dual weapons, and it's definitely not going that great for the shades. In the meantime, though, Marathi is getting clear. She's actually been terrified by the Doom Wheel, which is just still an absolute menace. Doom Wheel is definitely something unexpected, and that's something that's definitely been causing me quite a bit of a pain in this game. This left flank is folding. You can see the plague monks, or the sun plague monks over here, are absolutely tearing through these shades. Fortunately, my opponent does not focus on these plague monk sensor bearers. Unfortunately, I have lost track of these dark riders over here. I should definitely pull them back in. I do pull this one unit back in, and they get on top of the Doom Wheel. And they're actually tearing through it pretty efficiently, especially now that the Black Dragon's going to dive in. The Doom Wheel should go down fairly quickly. You can see another Doom and Darkness go down, breaking apart this blob of units with Marathi. And now hopefully this Doom Wheel will get chased down and eradicated. Unfortunately, my opponent still has a very sizable blob of units. My shades are definitely getting mauled pretty badly. You can see my opponent is pushing these Plague Monks Sensor Bears into my shades. So I'm going to have to commit the shades into another pell-mell here against the Plague Monks Sensor Bears. I'm just hoping to kind of win out in a drawn-out sort of slugfest. Shades are no pushovers in melee, so definitely it's not a completely naive or hopeless task, but it's definitely going to be a bit of a struggle, especially with all these units coming in from behind them. In the meantime, though, I'm just committing my Dark Riders to try to pursue some of these units off the field, get rid of this Doom Wheel, and then pursue some of these other fleet units off the field. Marathi is also trying to pursue, as are these Bleak Swords, and I'm simply allowing these Shades to do their best against these Storm Vermin and the Plague Monk Sensor Bearers. In the meantime, some Witch Elves have recovered, and you can see some of these Shades have come back, and the Dragon is still there. The Dragon is still there being a nuisance, and I do land it now. And you see the Witch Elves do hit the Plague Monk Sensor Bearers. The Dragon dives in and terror outs the Clan Rats instantly. So definitely things looking a bit up. You can see the power bar is swinging in my favor. Marathi's kind of wiping out these units. And yeah, the Dragon is doing some good work, but it is going to start taking quite a bit of a beating because there are, of course, Storm Vermin in there with halberds. And Skrulk, like I've mentioned before, is no pushover, and he can definitely hurt the Dragon pretty significantly. I do pull the Dragon out and escape. You can see, fortunately, some of my Shades are still around kicking, and they're going to recover, and they're going to be able to start shooting these Storm Vermin with halberds. They're definitely a bit whittled down. These guys are down to 13 models, these guys down to 19. I don't even think I have a full... I have about one full unit's worth of Shades left on the field, which is definitely not the greatest situation to be in. And I do drop another Noxious Breath on these Storm Vermin with halberds, and now I start to whittle them down with crossbow fire. And that could definitely be a bit of a saving grace here. In the meantime, these Bleak Swords are just trying to swarm these Storm Vermin halberds, which is, once again, not the most ideal situation. Storm Vermin have very high armor and respectable melee stats, though nothing amazing. However, I do get a rear charge in and manage to break them and shatter them. Marathi's just chased the unit off the field there, but hopefully I'll be able to pull her back soon. And you can see my opponent's army does finally just fall apart. So definitely a Pyrrhic victory, a very interesting and very bit of a rough game. My opponent definitely caught me by surprise with the Doom Wheels. That's something I did not expect. The Shades performed very well initially at just murdering one of the Doom Wheels, but were then not able to shut down further Doom Wheels. And simply got tied down in melee because my opponent did a very good job just breaching my center and overwhelming it very quickly. The Dark Riders actually did okay at just shutting down my units and preventing them from getting into my backline, at least some of the time. Marathi got massive value out of some, as did the Black Dragon, so definitely something I was happy about. And the Bleak Swords and Witches did not perform too badly. So all in all, I think this list was reasonable, if uninspiring. I think it definitely performed somewhat well, and I definitely got to try that Doom and Darkness Terror Bomb sort of strat against Skaven. From the Skaven perspective, his Plague Monk Sensor Bears did absolutely champion work. The Doom Wheels did not do badly, surprisingly, but the terror outs they were inducing were one of the most decisive factors in that game, I think. And even the Clan Rats did okay, so definitely something to keep in mind. And yeah. As usual, guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any questions about Quick Match or Total War or anything like that, be sure to post those down in the comments, and I will respond as soon as I possibly can. I do believe that's it. As usual, guys, I thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.